Do you remember when Taylor Swift invented the idea of having a career? I loved that. Because before her, people simply came out at their gigs and sang a mix of material old and new, but Taylor's a marketing genius, so she called them eras and everyone lost their minds. I didn't go and see the Eras tour, I couldn't get tickets. That's not strictly true, I didn't try. I just couldn't bring myself to fight for them. I'd have loved to go. But the second I saw friends of mine on conference calls and with multiple windows and devices and email addresses, I was out. I'm more of a rock up on the day kind of girl. And even that with the Eras tour required a level of technical expertise beyond me. I feel like we need to elect a cabinet of Swifties because the level of organisation and precision required to get these tickets, where's their energy in government? All right, they would get things done. Speaking of blonde queens, I saw a video recently of Grace Helbig talking to BuzzFeed about her entire career as a creator. And it was such a fascinating watch because I don't know Grace personally. I met her at a convention once. She wouldn't be able to pick me out of a lineup. But there's that kind of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing of all YouTubers. And because I was making videos at that time, it sort of makes me see her as a bit of a contemporary. So it was really interesting to get her perspective of how she navigated the landscape shifting around us as creators. So I figured for this video, since I've entered a new act of my life, and I still have the existentialism hangover from that 1-2 punch of birthday and New Year, I figured we'd go down memory lane and take a look at my eras. In fact, I asked you lot on Instagram what you considered my eras to be, and there were some very interesting insights. So we're going to use that as a launching pad, a framing device, if you will. But first, before we go any further, speaking of people who know a lot about your presence online, a word from this week's video sponsor, Incogni. Now, given that I'm an internet veteran, you could say I've seen it all. I've been around so long that I remember what it was like when living your life online sounded like a good thing. Although in the world we live in, it's less of a good, bad thing and more of an essential thing. But that's no reason you can't look after yourself while online. Over time, the amount of personal data floating around online naturally increases. Names, phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses, all the way down to interests and hobbies, things like that. It's all out there for people to take advantage of. And alas, alack, there are people out there who would like to take advantage of it. Speaking of eras, think about the little sim robber running around just with a bag full of your personal data. That's what I'm thinking of. They want to take advantage of it. They're looking to buy and sell that kind of information for all sorts. Scams, harassments, everything awful. But this is where Incogni comes in, because when you create an account and grant them permission to work on your behalf, they can get to work taking your data back from all of these horrid data brokers. And on top of their automatic system, they now have a custom removals feature on their unlimited plan. So you can highlight specific sites you want to see your data expunged from, and they'll get right on it because they can't harm you if they can't find you. So use my code DanielJ at the link in the description for 60% off an annual plan, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can give Incogni a go and see if it's right for you. By the way, I know this is my second reflective video in a row, but it's the year of the snake, all right? We're coming to the end. We're about to finish the shedding. It's necessary. That's what you want when you're watching a video, isn't it? For the creator to tell you to eat your vegetables. Now, obviously, a few of these cross over massively, but it's fun to try and sort of timeline them a little bit, isn't it? And so I have. We begin with this absolute choice. So I'd been at uni with Tom and Chloe and Bing and then Jack and Dean and the Fratocrats, and you're surrounded by all these creative people who are all making stuff all the time. It's very entrancing. In those days, YouTube was just a place where you put stuff, right? These were the people who introduced me to the idea that YouTube was a place for more than just watching Janet Jackson performances. None of us dreamed of being a YouTuber, right? That wasn't a thing, it didn't exist. We wanted to make things. We wanted to make sketches and films, and YouTube was a nice place to put them, and so we did, and because everybody else had a channel, I figured I'd make one of my own. And as I started it, I was just finishing uni, and then I was moving back home, and obviously a bunch of my friends were living in London. My girlfriend at the time had just moved to London, so there was a lot of going back and forth. It was a very transitional period of my life, so I was just making stuff, figuring out how I wanted to be on camera, little J-cuts, appearing in loads of other people's videos, just sort of having a bit of fun, really. And I would say this continued until about 2014, which is when we enter. So I got a job in Waterstones after moving to town, and I was living in southwest London and working in southeast London. Now, you don't need to be Jeff Marshall to know that that is a bitch of a commute. South London is not very well connected to each other, so even though you drew it on a map and it didn't seem too far away, I'd have to use 4 modes of transport to get to work. And I loved that job, but people forget that working in a bookshop is still working in a shop. It's still retail. So I was really tired from all of the commuting, and I was a little bit frustrated, and I just remember having a conversation with Sammy where I was saying, I don't have time to do all of the creative things that everyone else around me is doing. I don't have the time. And the short version was Sammy ended up saying, okay, I hear you, but what if you stopped overthinking it, got out of your own way and just tried making some stuff and saw what happened? And around this time, I had requested and was granted a transfer into a store in central London, which was far more convenient for me. And I was able to get into a bit of a flow of making videos. Especially at this time, I saw what I did online as like little bursts of stand-up comedy. So I'd have a thought that was a little bit funny, and then I would write a script around it on the Monday on the bus, and then I'd come home on the Tuesday and I'd film it, and then on Wednesday I would edit and upload it. And that was the perfect little rhythm for me, and it was quite fun and creative, and before I knew it, I'd uploaded 10 videos in a row, and I was feeling thrilled with myself. And obviously it helped that at this point on YouTube, shorter videos were doing a lot better. Like, they were the priority. It's sort of crazy to think about in an age where you can upload a vlog that's longer than Justice League, and it will find an audience who watch it all. Back in the day, short videos were not only encouraged, you couldn't upload a video that was longer than I think 15 minutes. So all of that suited me perfectly because it really worked with my schedule, and I could just bash the video out and we were rolling and everything was feeling really good, and then before we knew it... Now, this is where things get interesting, because obviously in 2015, the collab was king, right? It was all over the playbook. There was literally a playbook. I never read it, but I do know one channel that read it and followed it cover to cover, and they blew up big time. So egg on my face. And much like my entire career, really, I sort of fell into a goldmine format. So I bake, right? And I thought it would be interesting and fun to bake while I was vlogging. And because at the time I lived with professional narcissists, they were like, we'll be in the video as well. And hey presto, Baking with Layton was born. And you can actually thank Hannah Witten for Baking with Layton becoming a thing, because she was coming over to film an episode of Drunk Advice, and we were talking about what we could film for my channel, and she was like, can I do a Baking with Layton? And I hadn't really thought of that as being a format, so I was just like, sure. And then everyone wanted to be in it. True fact. I never once asked a single person to be on Baking with Layton. They always asked me. And I'm so chuffed about that, because it just means that people watched it and they thought it was going to be fun, and they wanted to spend time doing that with me. And that's really nice. Without a shadow of a doubt, Baking with Layton is my biggest era. This is my 1989, all right? It has 5 million views. I performed 3 live standing room only shows. I wrote a book. And most importantly, I got 2 tweets from Nigella Lawson, thanks to Baking with Layton, complimenting my baking. And I know a lot of people still watch them as comfort videos, and that is so, so special to me. So thank you very much for this era. Alright, here's where we get a little bit spicy. So I'd had a decent little run of brand partnerships, and I was starting to grow as a creator, and I was having to turn down opportunities because of the bookshop work. So I decided to take a little risk, and I stepped away from having a traditional job and tried my hand at being a full-time content creator for a while, just to see what was going to happen. And the very first thing I did was make a video every single day in April. A few of my friends had done it, and I just was curious to see whether or not I could do it too, you know? I wanted to push myself creatively. And because I'd been in my rhythm of how I planned and wrote and produced videos, I wanted to see if I could be creative in a pinch. I wanted to show myself what I could do. So I thought I'd give it a go, and 2 things happened. I managed it, and I had so much fun doing it, and I grew more than I had in any other month. But I couldn't keep the momentum after it finished. I think leaving the job and then going straight into that, I bit off more than I can chew. It was a bit too much too fast. I think that much concentrated creativity was more than a bit knackering, to be honest with you. And it left me in a bit of a vulnerable place, because I had grown and done well, so subsequently I was thinking so much about the numbers. And every single time I made something and it didn't perform well, it would crater me. I think that's the burnout thing, because I was in such a vulnerable place. When something goes wrong, I couldn't just respond to it like, hey, that didn't work, we'll move on. It took up so much energy because I was so depleted. Real life had got a bit intense around this time too, and so vlogging that life felt a bit inappropriate. I got triggered by an awful lot of things that I didn't even realise. I didn't realise that I was being triggered by them until very recently, if that makes sense. It's only in the past year or so, year of the snake, shedding, that I've sort of created space to look at and understand the impact that life at that time had had on me as a person. And because as a YouTuber, I'm sharing my authentic self, the impact that that had on me as a creator. Do you know what I mean? And one final ingredient in this storm in a teacup, algorithms at this time had started to change. What was popular and what connected you to your audience also started to change. Where once it was just like, upload the video, people subscribed will see it, and they might share it amongst their friends, and if you're lucky, the sidebar will work for you. The way you found and connected with an audience had started to change, and I wasn't alive enough to that change. Frankly, I don't think I'm equipped enough to deal with it. I have a creative brain, and we were entering an era where if I wanted to make a success of it, I needed to be more analytical. Danger on the horizon. So I spent a lot of 2019 not knowing what I was doing or how I was going to do it. At this point, I actually preferred Instagram, I think, because it felt so much more immediate, and I could be a little bit freer, a little bit more loose. I could just be goofy on Instagram. I'd make jokes over like 3 story frames, or I could just be Travel Dan, for instance. Whereas YouTube felt like it needed to be more planned and more prepared, and I just didn't know what I was doing with it. There were moments of clarity. I really enjoyed doing my monthly vlogs, and I still do, although they're trickier when I'm older, more on that later. And I managed to make a video every day in June as well, but once again, I didn't have a plan for what came afterwards. Mostly I just had no idea what was going on. And then we went into COVID, and obviously that's a massive life change for everybody, and I was on my own. And what's really interesting is when I was asking what you thought my eras were, a lot of you said the era of you and your friends, watching you hang out with your friends. And here I was, completely alone. So how do I do that? How do I present you with what you've come to enjoy about this channel if what you enjoy about this channel is me hanging out with people and I'm on my own? And then I got a comment, capital letters. So I got a comment that said, you don't live with Dodie anymore, so I have no reason to watch you. And when I tell you that that felt like a full body punch, and I was hollow thinking about it for days. Dodie was fuming on my behalf, to be clear. Unless she was pulling an unknown number and it was secretly her account, haven't thought about that. That comment just sort of lodged in my brain that my worth was in the access that I brought to other people. Like, I was a DVD extra. I am fun and you like sort of watching it, but I'm not the reason you bought the box set. And genuinely, since then, I've struggled making videos. It's not just because of that, you know, like the world that we're in at the moment is hard, and sometimes it feels like what we do as YouTubers is frivolous. Like, does it really matter when there's actually important stuff happening in the world? But it doesn't help, because now there's a voice in my head that says nobody cares about you, and it has empirical data to back it up. Like, logically, I know that whoever the person who wrote that was has something going on with them, or they didn't realize the impact of what they were saying, and it's not technically about me, and I want to have grace and empathy for that. And I also know that a decrease in viewership, or the fact that I have plateaued under 100,000 subscribers, like just within a hair of 100,000 subscribers, is as much to do with the changing habits of how people use YouTube, how my audience used YouTube, and the fact that I haven't responded to that change. I don't play the game very well, so I know that there are many different aspects to what's going on, but all of that data goes to that little voice in my brain. I still made some videos in that era that I'm really proud of. I did work with Cineworld, I did work with BAFTA. BAFTA wanted me. And then I joined up with WrestleTalk, and I entered a bit of a Critic era, and I had a lot of fun. However, when I was thinking about making videos, I was putting on a persona of what I thought people expected a YouTuber to be, rather than connecting inwards to the authentic self and the reason that I make videos. And that sort of created a sort of inner struggle, the energy needed to summon the idea and the persona and the content and trying to figure out how to play the game. All of that was pulling with each other. It wasn't the one. Some of the videos I made in this era I absolutely stand by, but I started to realize that while I was genuinely good at the Critic era, like I'm a good presenter, I do well in the junkets, I'm good at hosting stuff, it was pulling me away from what I really wanted to do. I had a moment of realization where I was spending my life talking about the things I love rather than doing the things I love. And that's when, like a bolt from the blue, we move into the most recent era, which I loved so much. I'm so glad I managed to make videos during what was such an intense period, because I will have that to look back on forever, and it was so precious, and that's great. And I think it was also really good to remind myself that I can be creative in a pinch, because sometimes it doesn't matter how much planning you put into something, life is going to happen and you have to adapt and respond to it. And it was also really nice for YouTube to be my secondary focus again for a little while. I hope that the stuff that I made during drama school era was something that can be useful to anyone else who is thinking of going to drama school, or maybe has an audition and they're nervous and they're looking and trying to find out what it looks like in the building or whatever, because I know I was doing that when I found out I had the place. God, I was scrambling for any bits of information I could find. So it would be fun for me to be able to pay that forward a little bit, I think. And what also was really nice is that obviously master's degrees bring a variety of different experience levels and ages together. And I was on the course with people who had watched us growing up, and they got to, you know, meet me and I got to be friends with them in a peer context. And also while I was making videos there, nobody was judging me, nobody was being like, oh, that's a bit lame. They were all so encouraging and so active and present in it. It was just really nice. Here we are in 2026, 14 years after I first uploaded a video to this channel. And I'll be honest, who knows where we go from here. In the BuzzFeed video, Grace said, I don't want to create for the most amount of people. And I think, cheers to that. I will be honest, I am so frustrated that in my career I have achieved so much, but I haven't managed to get to 100,000 subscribers, and I probably never will. The silver play button would be nice, you know, even if just to fill a gap on the gallery wall. And lately I've been having conversations with adults I trust about what I should do next. Like, has my time for being a YouTuber passed? Is it cringe that I still make videos? Does anybody out there care? Or can I find a way to keep going? Is there only ever one peak in a YouTuber's career, or can I bounce back and make it like this? Like a roller coaster. One thing I want to keep at the front of my mind is what means the most is when I get comments from people saying that they've been here watching since the beginning. Or not even the beginning, just for years at a time. When they tell me their age when they started and their age they are now. And it's seeing a small but active and engaged community of people. Like, that's what it was always about. I remember people joining the queue for my table at Summer in the City solo and making friends with each other, and then they would maintain those friendships outside of that context and like tag me in pictures for it. People stopping me in the street still to this day, or when I revisited the Waterstones era at Christmas to tell me how much my videos bring them comfort. Or, people came to see Head Over Heels at Mount View. Oh my god. Like, all of that is so much more special to me than a little play button. And I don't know if I'll ever get my head around the algorithm. You know, I don't know if it's possible to play YouTube's game and still stay authentic to myself, but I have some ideas. So watch this space. New era possibly loading. My life of a showgirl. Just without that song about dicks.